Greetings everyone. Let's consider the Proxy Pool Checker module. It is located in the left menu, under the Special Modules, and then the Proxy Pool Checker. This module checks the proxies you specify for the uniqueness of IP addresses, meaning the software checks the IP addresses for each proxy and identifies which ones are unique and which ones are not. Now I will show you in more detail and demonstrate. Here, there are two modes of operation, rotating proxies and sticky proxies. Rotating proxies are proxies that rotate with each request, which you can check. And sticky proxies are either static proxies or proxies that rotate over time for each proxy. For example, if you generated a certain number of proxies from your proxy provider, each proxy should have a unique IP address. Let's insert, for example, 50 proxies, all of which are different and generated by us. This module will check for intersections between them, meaning for each proxy, the module will obtain the IP address on that proxy and compare it with all the others to see if there are any duplicates. This is very convenient because if your proxy provider has a small pool of IPs for a given country, for example, and you generate, for example, 500 or 1,000 ports and think that they will have different IPs, in reality, it may turn out that some of the IP addresses overlap. So, using software with overlapping IPs is not quite reliable and not suitable for work. So, we specified the proxies. The module works quite fast. We press Start. And as we can see in the results, the software gives us the count of our 50 added proxies. Some proxies may fail, but it doesn't matter. In other words, the module worked, giving us the result that out of the 50 proxies we added, we have 50 unique results, meaning 50 unique IPs. If we work with these proxies, we can be sure that each proxy has a unique IP address. In other words, they do not overlap with each other. So here you can add 500 or 1,000 or 10,000. The module works quite fast. And accordingly, if you work with sticky proxies, either static or rotating over time, you can check if there is any overlap in these proxies because by default, there shouldn't be any overlaps. So, keep this in mind. Next, let's move on to rotating proxies. Here, as I mentioned earlier, rotating proxies are proxies that rotate with each request. Here, you select the protocol of your proxies, specify the proxy in the correct format, and here you specify how many requests to make. Since the proxies rotate with each request should have a unique IP address from the pool. There is also important information here, so make sure to read it. For example, if your proxy provider claims that there are 100,000 IP addresses in the selected geolocation pool, then by making 100,000 requests, you should practically get 100,000 unique IPs. In reality, these values may differ slightly, but I will show and explain it to you now. So, you specified the proxy and specified, for example, 2,000 requests, and we press Start.
the software makes 2,000 requests to our proxy, receives IP addresses, and compares the data obtained. Based on the data obtained, it gives us the result, meaning that out of these 2,000 requests on this proxy, there were 1,913 unique IP addresses and 87 duplicates. There is also a column for connection errors. For example, if the connection failed and the request was not set, the software will report it, such as 1, 2, or 5 connection errors. So, for example, based on the proxy data, we can see that over 90% of the IP addresses are unique. If your proxy provider assures you that they are, for example, 10,000 unique IP addresses in the pool on these proxies, you can set 10,000 requests here and click Start. Out of the 2,000 requests, there were few overlaps, which is acceptable. Currently, 10,000 requests are being sent to the proxy, but ideally, if the proxy provider says that you have 100,000 IP addresses in the pool for a particular country, then after making 100,000 requests, you should have 100,000 unique IP addresses. By default, the software works fast, checking in 500 threads. Here, you can analyze and add your own proxies. Check how good the pool is. By making 10,000 requests, we already have around 80% unique IP addresses on this proxy. This is also a good indicator, but if, for example, you work in 20 threads and everything is happening smoothly and gradually in your work, then such a pool is more than enough for you. And also, if it is periodically updated. But if you, for example, work in 100 threads, you need a larger pool for better results. If we take, for example, another proxy and test it with 2,500 requests, we can see that the results are worse. Out of the 2,500 requests, there are only approximately 2,000 unique IP addresses. That is, this module is made for you to understand which proxies you are working with and understand the approximate ratio. Because there are many cases when people register on some proxies and they start getting banned. They don't understand what's going on. In fact, it turns out that in their proxy pool there are only 200 to 500 IP addresses that circulate, and accordingly, it is clear why bans occur. The same goes for work. Ideally, the more IP addresses in the pool, the better. Consequently, this will have less negative impact on your work or registration. So, consider these moments as well and check your proxies, because the fewer repeated requests you have for your specified quantity, the better the quality of your proxies and the larger their pool. For example, if you specify proxies and the provider assures you that they have 1 million proxies in their pool, 1 million IP addresses, then you can confidently specify, for example, 250,000 requests, and mathematically, If there are 1 million IP addresses in the pool and you only make 250,000 requests, which is 4 times less than claimed, then the value of unique ones in this case should be close to 100%. In practice, however, I can say that it depends on the proxies and your tasks, how many threads you work with. But the quality of the proxy pool always needs to be checked. If, for example, 80% of unique IP addresses are shown here on 10,000 requests, then this is more or less a good result, especially if you work with a small number of accounts or register a small number of accounts, because this checker determines the number of unique IP addresses in the moment, not over a long distance. And right now, let's make 10,000 requests, but as I already said, ideally, of course, if there are 100,000 IP addresses in the pool and they are really there, and the proxy provider rotates on each request, everything is done correctly and with good quality, then even if you make 30,000, 40,000, 50,000 requests in the proxy pool checker, almost all of them should be unique. I tried to explain it to you in as much detail as possible. I hope I conveyed the understanding and information regarding this module to you. Now it should be much easier for you to select proxies. Check the pool or choose them for your tasks, because it is a very common situation when there are 100 to 200 IP addresses in the pool, but users register many accounts or work with many accounts, and then they wonder where the bans and mass blockages are coming from. So, this aspect also needs to be understood. Therefore, check your proxies, draw conclusions based on the results, and, as I already mentioned, ideally, the larger the IP pool, the better for each proxy. So, thank you all for watching. Goodbye to everyone.